Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 128 and we have a good one for you today, and it fits the spirit of the season. Kind of. It's kind of hard to find a Christmas sort of fish. We did the long-nosed hawkfish one Christmas. That looked like a peppermint candy cane. I tried to delve a little bit deeper into this year's. Got the shirt on, because it's Christmas, ho ho ho, all that. We're doing good, but I hope you like this fish because it was definitely an interesting one for me to actually dive into. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is bam, the reindeer wrasse. Now, the reindeer wrasse, or scientific name Nova culictes tanioris. Again, that is Nova culictes tanioris. I hope I said that right. Probably didn't, but I hope I did. It is part of the family Labridae, which is the family of wrasses. It is the only species in its genus. It's called the reindeer wrasse, but it's actually quite often called the Rockmover wrasse, the dragon wrasse, or the carpet wrasse. If you've ever heard of the Rockmover wrasse, this is what I'm talking about. It seems to be more commonly known as the Rockmover wrasse or the dragon wrasse. You find a lot more information about that, but it is all the same species. But it's Christmas, so we're calling it the reindeer wrasse. It is native to the Pacific and Indian Oceans, and they live on shallow reefs. They're kind of found throughout. They're extremely widespread. This is not a rare fish. You can find them at depths as deep as 14 to 25 meters, which is about 46 to 82 feet. But they really love shallow reefs. Shallower the better. They love reefs with semi-exposure and wave action, meaning reefs that are so shallow that sometimes they'll actually be exposed above the water, or waves will be crashing over the reef and you'll actually get some of that turbulence right there. If you don't know, if you haven't spent much time in the ocean, waves have turbulence underneath them. It's not just traveling over the top of the water, it's kind of traveling under the water as well. Now, it is a little to medium-sized fish, 27 to 30 centimeters in length, which is about 11 to 12 inches. So about a foot long. I mean, it's not enormous, but it's not just, it's not like a micro goby or anything. And they do have a decent range of colors. It is a beautiful, colorful fish, but it really only usually falls into 3 colors. Adults have this black body with these white speckles. They have this white face with these dark lines radiating from the body. That's another reason why one of the other common names is actually called bar-cheeked wrasse. Now, males have yellow lips. This is actually an adult female. Males will have much more yellow lips. They don't really get the appendages on them. These appendages, these 2 spines being projected, that's one reason why it's called the reindeer wrasse, including, I think, this could be taken as a reindeer, sort of antler coming off the eye. Males have this, these really yellow lips. They also both have a kind of reddish patch on the belly, but it's much more prevalent in males than females. So the head is actually scaleless in this fish. It's got 2 scales like right here, 2 scales, and then there's a row of scales right behind each eye. They're pretty small. Why the head is scaleless except for the scales here and this row like right here, I couldn't even begin to tell you. Couldn't begin. I tried looking at some scale morphometrics to figure out if they improve drag or anything. I don't understand why the scales are there. Couldn't tell you. Something interesting about wrasses, not just the reindeer wrasse, but wrasses in general, is they actually do have kind of a projectile mouth. Or protractile mouth. Not a, there is a little bit of distinguation. And they usually have separate jaw teeth that jut outwards. And that's a little bit of an interesting sort of situation. Most animals that have modified jaw structures, they do so to do one of two things: either to make it easier for them to get into spaces, or to create a stronger bite force. The wrasse is a little bit different. They've become a big study species in fish feeding biomechanics because of how their jaw structures. They have this 4-bar linkage sort of property, which is an extremely sturdy linkage. If you can think, it's the easiest way I can describe it to is if you think of, I always call them grasshopper oil wells. If you've ever been driving down the road, and I don't know if it's just an American thing, if they're overseas in Europe or Africa or Asia or anything, but in America, they have these things, and I don't even know what they called. Grasshopper oil rig. Yes. I'm glad I can look that up and it's just worked there. Well, how these grasshopper oil rigs, these oil derricks work, is actually the same thing on how the sturdiness is how the wrasses work, how this thing moves. It's got weights that circle here, and it causes this entire structure to be very minimalistic but extremely sturdy. And that's becoming it's become a big study in this biomechanic because these how those work, it allows their jaw to kind of manipulate themselves to achieve a different mechanical result, meaning they can do both a fast jaw protrusion, meaning they can actually kind of shoot out their mouth quite forcefully, and they have an extremely forceful bite. This kind of decouples morphology from function. So usually, projectile is to like get out there, catch it quick, and eat its whole. They're actually projecting and creating an extremely forceful bite. It's a really interesting thing, and I highly encourage you to go look into it. Very rarely does like something like this naturally evolve and be semi counterintuitive. And if you go look into it, and we can discuss a lot about that, it kind of doesn't make sense, which is why it's such an interesting fact. But it's not the interesting fact that we're going to end the video on. We got other things going on. When startled, they do bury themselves in sand like a lot of wrasses. They do it extremely quickly though, like crazy quick. If they are scared, if you startle them, and if you have these in an aquarium, you can startle them, they will shoot. It's almost like the sand's just more water. They bury themselves so incredibly quick. So fast, it's just mind-blowing. Which is why if you do have them in an aquarium, and by the way, if you're asking how much these fish are in the aquarium, I'm just gonna go ahead and tell you, I have found them everywhere from like $1 a fish to $500 a fish. Depends on who you buy it from. I couldn't even begin to give you a price. Prices don't make sense to me in terms of this fish. But if you do have them in an aquarium, you need about like 5 inches of sand at the bottom so they can safely kind of dive down. In terms of their feeding, it's almost like we're going to end this video on 3 different fish facts. It was a mind-blowing fish, and wrasses are just interesting fish in general, but this one in particular was really crazy. And so the first interesting fact that we're going to end the video on, there you go, my Christmas present to you all, 3 interesting fish species facts. That's how we're going to do this, a Christmas present. So the first interesting fish fact that we're going to talk about is their feeding strategies. You remember how I said this fish is known as the Rockmover wrasse? Well, the reason why it's called the Rockmover wrasse is because it actually does move rocks when it's looking for food. But it's a little bit interesting. They're coming in and they're taking these small stones and reef fragments and they're kind of like picking them up. But if you've ever like gone flipping rocks trying to catch something, trying to catch lizards or snakes, you know that flipping rocks is really difficult. You flip a rock and you try and get under the rock before the lizard runs away, and it's really difficult. And these things are feeding on mollusk, crabs, and worms, things that can get down in the sand really quick or run away really quickly. So how it combats that is they fish in pairs, or they hunt in pairs, basically. So the best thing to catch that lizard is to have a friend down there near the rock. As you lift the rock, they go in and immediately try to catch this lizard. Well, this is kind of the same process. They hunt in pairs. One fish will go around and keep picking up these really large rocks, and large for a fish this size, and rubble, grabbing and pulling and pushing it with its mouth and snout, bowling over almost like a bulldozer. They're very much like a bulldozer when they feed. And the working member of the pair keeps doing that, whereas the one that's eating just kind of follows along, and as soon as something is revealed, that other fish darts in, grabs, and eats it. And then they'll switch. So it's a very much of a partnership between the two of them. And it does not necessarily have to be it's not necessarily like a breeding pair or anything like that, which is why we're going to talk about the next interesting fact, breeding. Wrasses don't have breeding pairs. They are pelagic spawners most of the time, and there's not a lot known exactly about the Rockmover wrasse, but it's kind of assumed that it's a pelagic spawner, meaning that they just kind of broadcast eggs and sperm into the water column, hoping they meet up. But the difference about this and about almost all wrasses is they're actually hermaphroditic and can change sexes. So the two that are helping each other are not a male and a female. They could be at the time, but they can switch sexes quite easily, actually. So they're moving around and just basically, hey, you want to team up today? Cool, let's team up. And then they go find stuff to eat together. And then, yeah, it's a kind of a bizarre system. And another thing I highly encourage you to go check out Wrasse reproductive strategies. It's highly successful, just very, very odd. But now for the third interesting fact and the final interesting fact of the video. Adults and juveniles are very, very different. This is one of those fish that I could easily believe was a different species. So let me show you this. In juveniles, bam, the first two spines are extremely long and extended. You see here, this almost looks like a lionfish, but it's not. This is a juvenile Rockmover wrasse, or reindeer wrasse as we're calling it there because it's the holidays. Juveniles, they're extremely long and extended, and if you look, they're kind of side by side, and they'll oftentimes droop over the top of the head, performing a sort of like cowlick sort of structure. The reason for all this modeling and all these long filaments is usually juveniles are actually much more shallow than the adults, so they're floating along like seaweed. They don't really swim a lot. They're actually just kind of drifting and detached and using that to camouflage themselves, swaying back in the back and forth in the currents, imitating that drifting seaweed or algae. So this sort of burgundy color is actually a juvenile with all these sort of appendages. However, I don't know if you caught me. If you remember when I was talking about the colors of this fish, they fall into three categories. So this is one, like, I know what you're thinking, well, this is kind of different, but they're basically the same thing. You know, this is one color scheme. The burgundy juvenile is sort of another one. However, and this is just truly mind-blowing and it would not surprise me if this becomes a different species in the future. Juveniles in Hawaii and a lot of the Western Pacific, and you might enjoy this, right? Because I know you grew up in Hawaii or lived there for a while at least. But juveniles found in Hawaii are actually a bright green. A bright green. So the Eastern Pacific is sort of this green one, and I don't know if that's because the seaweed is were green there or what. So your Eastern Pacific is this green juvenile form. The Western Pacific is this burgundy sort of color, brownish color, but then they both grow up to look like this as a female and this as a male. And again, they can switch sexes, so don't just say that. So these two fish, I don't care who you are. If you threw this fish in front of me and this fish in front of me, I would not think they were the same fish species. It absolutely blows my mind. So that's the three sort of color patterns that they fall into. The green juvenile, the burgundy color, my goodness, the color phenotype. Sorry, I couldn't actually think of a word for that, so we're just going to talk with the scientific term phenotype. And then the adult. So just absolutely mind-blowing. Highly encourage you to continue looking into fish. I actually encourage you to go in and look at all the fish I've talked about. Go look at some of these interesting facts and refute me. I love being refuted. That is not actually sarcasm. I want people to question what I say and verify that what I said is correct. I slip up. I admit that. These Fish Fridays, I wish I could put a lot of work into it, but I've got a job. So a lot of times I'm up late on Thursday, scrambling, trying to get a fish together. But Merry Christmas, and I hope the Reindeer Wrasse made your Christmas a little bit brighter. But thank you guys so much again. I really hope you appreciate it. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Love these comments. Love how much attention the video is going. And I hope that you have a wonderful holidays. But regardless, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, and peace.